Do you feel like you're like so it's interesting. I feel like a lot of kids now are or there's a lot of jokes now of like the weird guy hitting on you and girls being like, "Ew, oh my God, like I
Yeah,
would
yeah, oh
don't
my
talk to
God,
me."
yeah.
Yeah, like you're a creep, you know? Because of historical context and pop culture and all that stuff. Like I feel like your generation maybe it was more accepting to be approached. It's hypocritical too. I hear some girls saying like, "No one talks to me." It's like, well, because we're scared of getting me too'd or whatever. Because I'm saying hi to you or being like, "Oh, you're disgusting," and you're like,
Yeah.
"Holy shit." Okay, sorry, just asking where the bathroom is.
Yeah.
How like you think you'd still do that today? And like, was it a big thing for you to go hit on chicks?
No, no.
No.
I
You still
wasn't
felt
that
nervous and
I wasn't that guy in the mall like chopping numbers and
so now you're going to chop people at Indigo?
yeah, man.
So you just don't care because you're older now.
I would totally go in like the self-help section
Okay.
because I'm like,
She's
okay,
going to think you're desperate and you need therapy if you're in this self section.
probably, but I'd be like, okay, and if that aisle doesn't work, like I'll move to like the cooking section because I'm like, okay, either this girl
Oh, that's a good
wants to know
one.
how to cook,
That's a good one.
or like she is interested in cooking.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, if this girl can cook, like that's one thing checked off.
That's
But
so
it's like
misogynistic of you. Why
Yeah.
don't you cook?
I do cook, man. God damn it, you haven't even ate my food. Anyways, like
enough.
back to your question about you. What did you ask me?
How would you would still go approach girls today?
Oh, right. So you were making a claim that the generations are different, right?
Yes, yeah.
I would absolutely agree with that, right? So, this is one of those like, well, back in my day, Pav, like back in my day, there were role models, right? And those role models were like nuclear family, white picket fence, 2 kids, nice house, treat your woman right, chivalry, open the door for women, right? Obviously there are some bad parts of that generation as well, which we're now better human beings to recognize that and like saying no when to stop. But, I always look at the younger generation and I'm like, shit, there are no role models because all the celebrities or even some of the influencers that are married, guess what? They're divorced. And who just got divorced recently? Someone got divorced. I was like, no.
Like a big celebrity?
Yeah. I don't know who it was, but I was like, no, like they were like one of the few left who I don't know who it was, but there are very few role models for, young people to look up to and be like, "Oh, that's how I should treat my wife." Or, "Oh man, that's how I should discipline my kids." Right? Because nowadays the content we're consuming is not interested in any of that shit. It's all like, let me find the best looking ass, right? The best looking TNA. And if I don't like that, I'll just swipe left or swipe right, right? So on one hand, the access and the convenience is there, but because of that access, am I limiting myself to some of my options, right? It's tough, man.
Yeah, we sound like such boomers here talking about back in the day. Back
I
in
told
my
you this
day.
is back in my day.
Yeah, I know you're right. It's definitely interesting what's the future of families and relationships look like, and
Well, if you look at I think a couple years ago, the statistics of the rate of marriage has like drastically either cut in half or it's like non-existent because the definition of marriage now is just not, it's not something a lot of younger people or even some older people that I know are just like, I'm not gonna get married again, right? But coming from like an immigrant family who is Catholic, that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to find somebody, you're supposed to be committed, get married, have kids, and then die, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do, bro. But nowadays, that definition is probably on its head of, hey, if I find somebody great, but I'm going to make sure I'm going to make myself happy. And that happiness may not be with sharing stuff, may not be with somebody who I'm willing to sacrifice for, because my happiness comes from just doing some selfish stuff, which is okay. But I think the definition of marriage and the role models plays an important part in some of the challenges that people who are dating now have.
that's a really good point because my grandma used to joke, have as many kids as it needs to raise the farm or something like that. I'm like, oh, what farm? But okay, sure. And that was the mentality,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
of parents.
yeah.
You only, get intimate to make kids and that's it. And God's watching and have enough for the farm and great, But I feel like there's, that role model of how to do it maybe is not there for people. It's a lot of like excess and as much as I love TikTok, I really do. It's very dopamine driven, hit like, and I find
Totally.
myself, if the video's not if it's a longer video, great, but if it's not engaging the whole way through, I'm gone. Or even like brushing my teeth sometimes, I just have stuff in the background to always be stimulating. And so I wonder how that plays into relationships of like you know we're not in the lovey-dovey phase anymore.
Nope.
How am I how do I know we're okay?
Yeah.
I've had a friend who came to me and he's like, I think I got to break up with her. And I was like, why? And he's like, we just sit in silence sometimes. And I'm like, oh, I think that's kind of good though, no? Like to sometimes not have her talking to you. And he's like, yeah, I think she hates me. Like it's just a weird thing where I think people are like, it always has to be those movie moments. It always has to be happy. It's never that calm, quiet. And I feel like something my grandmother and maybe in your relationship now is like, as you get older, you like that. You want that companionship, but without that excess and galore and, gaudiness, if that's the right word.
Yep.
And, I think it's cool to have this idea of like, I'm going to be personal or selfish is what you said about this is what I want. And the girl saying, I'm just going to have a boyfriend. But don't you think you've learned a lot by being with someone and saying like, I'm committed to them, and I can't walk away
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to get at. And I have to learn to live with someone. Do you feel like there's a lot of stuff you learned about yourself?
I think a lot of any successful relationship is they'll always say it's a two-way street, but at sometimes it's not a two-way street, right? Sometimes you'll be on the highest of highs, and your partner is going to be on the lowest of lows. So you've got to figure out some way to bring them up, and that takes energy and that takes sacrifice. There's some people that I know that just aren't willing to make that sacrifice, and that's totally cool, right? And that might be, seen as selfish, but if that's what makes you happy, then go ahead and do that. But I think for any, I'll bring it back to, hey, you see myself and May as like, oh my God, you guys get along so well and like everything works. But that's taken a ton of work and sacrifice to get to where we are today. A lot of people that I know or knew